Hello, Larry Martin here. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about my Harbor Freight Lathe. It's a 12 by 36. When I first got into wood turning, my interest was spiked by watching YouTube, and I decided I wanted to get into it. I had been building knives and so forth, and I'm the type of person that likes to experiment and do different things. I bore quite easily. So I decided that I would buy me a lathe and, the bare necessity tools to try this. I have an ample supply of wood around here. I live pretty much in the middle of some woods. So I waited for the coupons to show up in the paper, and I went and bought me one of them. I believe I ended up spending a little over $200, and it was about 50 something for some chisels. Of course, they say, oh, that was just the bare beginning. The lathe was the least expensive part of it. By the time I got into it, you just look around, you'll see how much money I spent. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the lathe and my experience with it. It's been about 9 months since I've been using it, so I'm pretty competent with it right now, I think. I've still got tons to learn. Naturally, you never quit learning. But I don't really have anything to compare it to as far as other wood lathes are concerned. I have a metal lathe, and I've turned a lot on it. I have turned a little bit of wood just out of necessity to make things fit in round holes and so forth. And I've turned some plastic. But that's about it on my experience with lathes. And as you probably know, there's two different animals. So I'm going to take the camera off the tripod and walk over to the lathe, and I'm going to discuss each part of it and what I think about it and the deficiencies that I saw in it and how I addressed them. It's okay, so let's go. All right, let's start right here with the headstock. When I first started, I started doing a few pins, and one things I really noticed was that pins were sort of awkward because there wasn't a wheel. There wasn't a hand wheel on it. So after looking around on YouTube and so forth, I found that I could buy a jet wheel, which I did, and there it is, and it's put on. Well, when I first bought it, I knew that the drawback would be that I couldn't use my knockout tool any longer. So when I got it, my thought was I'd just drill a hole through it, but I quickly found out that it uses a male reverse thread nipple on the end of it to screw in to the shaft, and it wasn't big enough to drill a hole through. So I went ahead and put it on, and it's quite handy. And in order to knock my drives and so forth off, I saw a guy was using this, and so I just adopted it. Works quite well. Just take your mallet and pop it off. It's actually easier than using the knockoff tool, because the knockoff tool, I found out that actually the little handle, if it was stuck pretty good, it would hurt your hand. So, I solved that problem right away. The other thing I found that bothered me a little bit was that the headstock did not lock. And this was sort of awkward when you had something on a worm screw and you're just trying to get it off. I ended up having to take it off and go to the vise to get them out a lot of times because I just couldn't hold it. So what I did is I took one of the wrenches that comes with it, and here it is, and I welded a little extension on it with a cutout, as you can see. Now what I do with this is I use it right here on the lathe. See right here, there's a magnet, and on the other side there's a magnet. Now what I do is I put it here, and it sits right there, and the magnet holds it in place. So that locks my headstock, I'm sorry. But it's only in one direction, and occasionally you need to go the other direction. So what I did here is I just put another magnet on this side. It's hard to do some things with one hand, and get that done okay. Now there you go. Now it locks it in the other direction. I realize that's sort of rigging, but didn't have a whole lot of choice. I'm working on something else. Now while we're talking about it, let's talk about speed. Okay, I wish it was a little slower. I wish it was a little faster. I've had sometimes, especially when you put a log on that's badly out of balance, you wish you could turn it about 100 RPM rather than the 500. That would be awful handy. I did see where a guy used a rheostat deal to slow his motor down. It ended up burning his motor up. Talking about the motor, I think the motor itself is too weak for this lathe. It's 3/4 horse, and I can easily drag it down. I've drug it down to the point where it'll start clicking and popping, and I have to let off. So, in fact, one time it even blew the breakers. So if it ever goes out, I understand it's a little bit of a job to convert it, but I'm gonna, because I can work metal, I can make the right brackets and so forth. So I'm going to put about 1.5 horses or 2 horses on it when this one bellies up, or maybe even before then. So moving right along, there's my dust system. And I don't have any problem with none of this other parts right here. I found the overall size of it was too close to the ground for me. As you can see, I put 4x4s under it, and they're screwed down to the 4x4s. I haven't put an unbalanced log on it yet to see how much it'll walk. Before I built this enclosure here, I used some railroad iron in it. Of course, this enclosure itself is pretty heavy, and I'm hoping it won't. But there's my buffing system in there. Makes it nice and a little shelf there. But if it still walks, what I'm going to do is use some construction cement and jack it up and put it under the 4x4s, and that ought to hold it in place. Other than that, I really don't have a problem with it. I mean, for somewhere around $200, $250, I just don't see how a person could possibly beat it. I plan on keeping this. I don't plan on upgrading. I can twist the head out and do bigger bowls if I need to. And I think at some point in time I'll switch the motor out to a variable speed motor and go from there. All the bearings in the headstock, they're all replaceable, and that's about all that could go wrong with it, really. The waves are, they're cast, so they will rust. But I have a solution for that, and my solution is pretty simple. I use PAM or some type of cooking oil on it. Here's some great value that I used. This is, if I did sit up here, that's granola oil. What I do is I spray it on there, and then I take a little sanding block and I rub it in right here. Not only does it keep it nice and clean and slick, it, as you know, nothing sticks to it. I don't know if that's a blessing or not, because I have found that sometimes it's hard to hold my tailstock in place. I have to really put the pressure on the lever because my ways are so slick. So anyway, if y'all have seen some of my previous videos, you notice that my dust collector had it was mounted in wood, and it had like a little shelf on top. Well, I almost had an accident one day, so I decided to get rid of that. I was laying my tools on top of it on a shelf whenever I was using them at 3 or 4, and I had an unbalanced log and one vibrated off. And luckily it fell sort of in behind it, but it got me thinking that, well, supposing that had fell forward and fell into a turning log and spun it up into me and went under my head, my mask or something like that, it actually could be fatal. So I got rid of that, and that's why I built this. This extends out about 6 inches, so I've got a place to lay all my tools as I'm working on things. Plus I don't have a big cavity to collect a lot of chips that's hard to clean out. So there you have it, my friends. Would I buy another one? Absolutely. This one bellies up tomorrow, I'll be over at Harbor Freight buying another one. Do I recommend it? Absolutely. Think about it this way, as much as I'd like to have some big fancy lathe, like a robust or something, I can buy 20 of these for what one of those cost. So, I'm not a professional wood turner. I just do it for my own enjoyment and give things to my friends. I don't intend to sell anything ever. So there you have it. I want to thank you for your time, and take care of yourself.